tell you a little story. This will be, I think, of interest to people in California, Greeks in California. When I started the project in 1973, I was always looking for money. And one of the people who came forward to help was a man named Nick Petrus. Petrus was a state senator from Oakland and Greek American, and he got involved and it was very helpful at the beginning. One day in September of 1979, I'm sitting in my office in Berkeley, and the phone rings, and it's Nick Petrus, and he says, "Steve, I've just been to Greece. I went to Nemean. What you're doing is wonderful. I like the progress you're making on the museum and so on and so on, but why are you not reconstructing the temple?" I said, "Nick, excuse me, I've got to find the money to buy the property. I have to find the money to pay the workmen. I have to find the money to bring the students here. There's no way that I'm going to ever be able to find the money to put that temple together. It's too expensive." He said, "Wait a minute, let me ask you something. How many donors do you have?" I said, "Right now, about 160. He said, "And how many are Greeks?" I said, "You and one other." "Two." He said, "I thought so." He said, "You're not a Greek. You don't belong to the church. There's no way you're going to get the Greek community to help you. But you and I will go together. We will make the temple a project for the Greek American community of California." And so we started out. We would go to church groups, cultural groups, what have you. And he said, "You talk about the temple, I'll talk about the money." He said, "But you will never say it's the temple of Zeus. It's just the temple, Onaus." And so that was the start of putting that temple back together.
You think it still works like this nowadays?
I don't think it's quite as, I have a notion, well, the Greek American community is still a very strong community. It still holds together. My wife is Greek American. She was born in Utah, but her parents came from just down the road here at Tripoli. And the church is still important to her and her family. So I don't think it's quite that way now. But
yeah, how do you think things change through the years here in Greece? Like right now, you think there's a more responsibility from the ministries for the ancient areas of Greece, or is it still so hard as it used to be?
Well, it's disappointing. It's discouraging. I built this museum and turned it over to the Greek state in 1984.
Yes, it's very important that you actually built the museum by yourself and sponsored the whole thing, and the Greek ministry
I'm not rich. I found the money.
I know you found the money, and nobody helped. This is that's why I said it's a.
There were people who helped along the way. There were people who didn't.
But not the officials.
Well,
yeah.
I'll give you an example right here. You see this nice big window?
Yes, I need to go closer to show it to the people.
I wanted a window like this, so that the visitor could stand here and look at the model of the way the site looked around 300 years before Christ, could look at the different artifacts, the ancient artifacts, and look out the window to see where it came from. So there would be a direct visual contact. What I would prefer is if the museum were right on the site, but that's not practical for a number of reasons. When I submitted the plans, there was a great debate in the Ministry of Culture about whether or not these windows should be built. And there's a long story about it, but finally I got permission to put the windows in. But it was pulling teeth to get that done. Another thing that happened was in the original plans, I had space downstairs for a furnace. And there would be radiators here to keep it warm. There was a man in the Ministry of Culture who said, "What do you need a furnace for? There are no tourists here in the wintertime." And I said, "But there are antiquities here. We need to keep it." "No, take the furnace out." So we didn't put the furnace in. And instead, if you happen to look up here, you'll see what is now here. Instead, air conditioners, and that's what we turn on in the winter to heat the room, in the summer to cool it. But it was a very short-sighted, and the same mentality. Now 45, 50 years later is still there. There is no tourism in the wintertime. As a result of that, last year and the year before and the year before, the museum here was closed on for all of November and all of December. And it reopened only because our society for the revival of the Nemean Games, a local society here, raised the money to hire 3 guards temporarily to keep the museum open. When we come to the 1st of April, Well, then they're a tourist. And so now we have a lot of young people who are coming in as guards who make it possible for the site to stay open and open later on. But this idea that people never travel in the winter is just wrong. It may have been right 50 years ago, but it's not right today.
So tell us a little bit about the Nemean games that you actually not reinvented, I would say revived, yeah.
Revived, yes. Well, there was a man who helped
First of all, you actually found the ancient stadium.
Oh, yes.
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 And you also planted trees and everything that
and put in park benches and fountains and what have you, of course. We landscaped it.
And then when you finished it, you established the Nemean games.
The story is this. There was a man who helped me tremendously with the acquisition of property in 1973 and 1974. And he said, I am helping you acquire the property in the stadium with two stipulations. One, that you dig the stadium. I said, of course I'll dig the stadium. I mean, why am I here? If I'm not going to dig the stadium where the games were, why should I even bother to be in Nemean? And he said, well, the second stipulation is that once you have dug the stadium, you will revive the ancient games. On July the 6th...
This man that you're referring about was a Greek?
He was a Greek hero, local man, who had grown up with the idea in his head. He was now in his 50s. He had grown up with the idea in his head that the ancient stadium of his patrida, his own land, should be excavated. And he tried to do it, and he didn't get it done, but I came along and I could do it, so he helped me a great deal. But it was a stipulation that once I had dug the stadium, I was going to revive ancient games there. It took us 15 years to get rid of the road that went through the stadium. And we finally got rid of it in 1990. And Menio saw the stadium dug, the complete stadium dug out, all the racetrack. But he had been in an automobile accident and he couldn't walk, he could hardly talk. His son and I carried him up and put him on a bench so he could look down and see the track. Unfortunately, he died about 3 months later. A few years later, in 1994, we were ready. We had our trees planted and our fountains and our walking paths, our benches and what have you. And it was time to open the stadium to the public, having turned it over to the Greek state. And so we had a ceremony on the 6th of July of 1994. The then Minister of Culture, Thanos Makroutsikos, came and cut the ribbon. All of the local politicians went blah, blah, blah. And then we went inside. And there were about 1,500 people there, most of them locals from this area. But we revived the Nemean Games that night. We put the ancient starting mechanism to work. We had students, young high school students and junior high school students run in chitons and tunics in their bare feet. We wanted to be authentic, but we didn't get their parents' permission that they run nude. So we still had them be as authentic as possible, and we had our revival of the games. Very special night. The winners got branches of palms and ribbons around their head, just as happened at the ancient games. At the end of the games, all of the winners with their palm branches and their ribbons got their crown of wild celery, which was the ancient symbol of victory from Nemean. And I went home that night and I said, Menio, the man who had helped me, Menio, wherever you are, I hope you're happy now. I've done what you asked me to do. End of story.